and I am joined today with Susan Mason, who is an expert trainer and coach and facilitator with AMA. Hi, Susan.
Hello, Dorothy. Good to
How
see
nice to
you.
see you. And this is one of the benefits that we'll talk about a little later today, that at least we have video, that we are very distant in space, but at least we can connect virtually and see one another.
Absolutely. And that is what we need to talk about today because this isn't just a for now. This is going to be our foreseeable future. I don't see us rewinding and going back to less virtual presentations, just a whole lot
Exactly.
more.
And so, what we're going to be talking about today to the audience is how to effectively present virtually. And it's something that I've experienced as a director and a senior person in my organization, and working with a lot of external clients, especially the last 6 months, of how do I present virtually? How do I make that shift from that in person presentation and engaging an audience and building that credibility? And Susan, it's obviously something that you are very accustomed to and have shifted quite a bit more, because you train virtually and you've always trained virtually, but now it's all the time you're training virtually and presenting.
I- I- Yeah, and I think that that's the big difference is, virtually can mean so many different things. And for a very long time, virtually was I've got my slide deck up and you don't see me. You're just hearing my voice. Now it's everything. It's your deck, you're interacting with other people, you are visible at all times. And that's very honestly, those are the things that bring a tremendous amount of benefit to being able to present online. There's also liabilities.
Of course, as there is with any technology, or when technology is involved, that it's another hurdle when we are working together, presenting and trying to get a message across, as with anything that we want to do with communication.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's always a process of here's the new challenge. Um, how do I adapt? How do I flex? What are the skills that I need? What are the considerations I need to have right in the front of my head? And then it's let's do it. You do it, you practice it, you process it, you get some feedback, you get better as you go along. But it always helps to have a good starting place.
Exactly. So we talked about a little bit of the technology, and that's one of the biggest challenges, at least for me, when you're working virtually, because it's scary. You don't know what to do if you have a technology slip up. But what are also some of the other challenges when we're talking about presenting virtually?
Right. So certainly, there's a lot that we do have control over when we talk about presenting virtually. And I know that what pops up into all of our minds first is this idea of bandwidth and will my internet be stable and what if with the technology. I got to tell you that after hours and hours and hours of doing this, that's not the thing that really makes the difference. Yeah, it might happen, but don't waste your energy there. When I think about the challenges with effectively presenting in a virtual environment, the first thing that happens for me is just the human one. After being in front of audiences a lot throughout my life, and now going virtual, it helps to see people, but the energy flow is different. It's not this mass of people all sort of together in the same place, and you're getting this give and take feel. So that feels different. But I have to say, we have great control over that if we're willing to ask everyone to turn on their camera. The most positive thing that can happen for any presenter is when we are looking out at our audience, and there they are, and they want us to be successful. right? So that's a big one. Choosing the right environment, one that you're going to be comfortable with. And there's two ways to think about environment. One, which is your physical environment, and that has a lot to do also with people's attention, just their sense of your professionalism. So there's that to think about. But there's also just the question of what platform do I have to use or can I choose? And if you can choose a platform based on the type of presentation that you're giving, you will find that there are going to be differences that will help you be effective. But we don't always get those choices. Um, I just worked with a client and they said, the only thing that we use is WebEx. It wouldn't have been my first choice for that particular delivery, but you know what? It was fine, and you make it work. And you just have to be thinking about platform. I think you also want to be thinking about what are the ways that I can use a camera. And I want to talk a lot more about that in a little bit, but camera placement. Should it be an onboard camera or should I really have a webcam? And listen, I know right now it's really difficult to get a webcam and even these headphones that I'm using. And I recommend using headphones because they are going to really give you the best sound, not just for you to hear, but also this little microphone makes a marvelous difference in the quality of your voice. And if there's one thing that in any of the virtual platforms that you might be working in that will always be a constant is your ability to use the qualities of your voice. And of course, there's the challenge of creating visuals because people are used to things changing up really quickly. It's not your old, I'm standing in front of you PowerPoint presentation and I can stay on the same slide for 5 minutes. It's got to be quicker and it's got to have great quality graphics. So there's more of a demand for all of that. The other thing that I would add in here before I get too far afield it, I think we really also need to be constantly thinking about engagement. Um, I was reminded yesterday, looking at some statistics that looked at people's attention and also attention when they are in very specifically a virtual environment. And if all you have is your voice and the slides, you're going to have about, and this is scary, everyone, about 40% attention. Now, you can up that with the quality of your voice and the quality of your slides and so on. But if you're just doing your status quo presentation, that's what's going to happen. If you ask people to turn on their cameras, and to create some interactive points in your presentation where they need to use the chat, where they pose a question to you, or even use their own microphone and talk to you. All of a sudden, that goes up to 92%.
Wow.
That means the multitasking is going away. People are engaged because well, there's a variety of things that they're involved, they're engaged because they're interacting with you. But I think also turning on our cameras makes us a little bit more accountable. And the temptation of, these things can uh, can get in the way. So it's important to try to do everything that we can to get that difficulty out of the way. So, as I started this answer with, I want to end this answer with there are a number of things that can be challenging in our presentations, but we have much more control than we are giving ourselves credit for. And that's really what I hope we'll spend a big chunk of time talking about is what are the things that as a presenter I can do that are going to really help me be successful. And you know, it we at AMA have actually pulled together a program to help people with that. It's called the Virtual Presentation Certificate Program, right? And it's really just there to say, we know that you're a good presenter, but now you're in a whole new environment. Let us give you some of the things that have to go through your head and some of the things that you can practice, and we can give you some feedback. So there's that's out there. There's also colleagues who can help you. There's other people who are in a similar situation. And the beauty of these platforms that we're in is that you can record
Yeah.
yourself and watch yourself back. So, yeah, there's some good things
Thank you,
out there.
Susan. And I think when
Yeah,
you're talking about different options, either taking a training program or working with your colleagues, it's practice, getting practice and that feedback and building that skill, because you learn by doing, and that's always an AMA hallmark. But if you don't have the time, there's plenty of colleagues that can offer feedback. But it's building that skill and setting yourself up for success and building that confidence, so you're not going into a presentation saying, I'm going to bomb because my Wi-Fi is going to go out.
exactly. Exactly. There's enough other stuff that can, in a good, helpful way, stress you a little bit. But there's a lot of stuff we worry about that just set it aside. We're in a brave new world, and our technology is really helping
Yep.
us.
All right,
Yeah.
so let's go into, the steps needed to present. So from soup to nuts, when we're looking at a virtual presentation, you get an email that you need to present to a group of external clients, anything that you need to present. What are some of the steps that you would need to take in that virtual setting? And I think we can pull up the slide that we have here that actually walks through some of these steps.
Absolutely. So this is AMA has for many, many, many years taught and offered programs in presentation skills. And the executive presentation skills program leans heavily on this model. And that's the model that we wanted to bring into our thinking process, because it really causes us to touch on all of the key elements of creating a highly effective presentation. So if we talk about probing, in a face-to-face presentation, that's going to mean, all right, I'm going to find out about my audience and what's the environment and what's the circumstances and what they need, and what's the result that I'm looking for. And guess what? It all means the same things in a virtual presentation, but the answers are going to look potentially a little bit different. So we're talking about topic, we're talking about audience, we're talking about purpose and result. But now we have to also think about it in terms of what's the platform that I'm presenting in. So when I probe, I've got to make sure that everyone in my audience is going to be able to access my presentation on a platform that they have easy access to, or that I can make sure that they can gain entry to. So that's just, one piece. Then when we think about probe, we also want to find out what are people's general attitudes about being online and being in a virtual environment. We want to find out about those cameras. We want to know that those cameras can be turned on so that people can be there to interact with us. And when I say interact, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are, visual for us. What I do mean is that they are going to be there in some shape or form to interact and chat, to interact with questions through chat, or if we're lucky enough, yes, cameras and with voice over internet. So we've got all of those elements going on. Planning now becomes a very, very different process. We know what we need to achieve. We know who we're talking to. We know the virtual platform. So we've got that big picture. Now our planning has to really center on, how do I create engagement engagement throughout the entire presentation. I make no assumptions about people's attention. What kind of visuals can I use? What kinds of rhetorical questions can I ask? What kind of voice animation can I bring to this presentation that's going to, whether they can see me or not, is going to enliven their experience and clearly get across my message. So these are all planning elements. Now there's many more things that we can bring into this process, but those are like little starters for a virtual environment. Keep track of those visuals. Keep track, very important, your voice. Keep track of using slides in a much more speedy fashion, right? Don't be afraid to go to blackouts, or don't be afraid to sit on a slide for a couple of minutes, but I'm talking a couple of minutes. So if you've got a 30-minute presentation, I'm going to be encouraging you to have 30 slides, maybe 40, right? So that you're using images, you're using graphics. Some will be very dense, some will be just energizing. Remember that a visual can say, just by itself, what it might take you a minute to try to articulate in just words. And then you've got to practice. That means practicing not in your head, but practicing in the platform environment that you're going to be using. Record yourself in that platform environment. If you can't do that, just pull out your phone, set it up on your on or around your computer and capture yourself, right? Work with some colleagues. I will very often just say, hey, I've got a big presentation coming up. I'd like to run a couple of areas that I think, I'm not as smooth or as coherent in as I want to be. Would you meet me in Adobe Connect, or would you meet me in Zoom? I send them an invitation. I then practice exactly the way I would if I were delivering to that audience a couple of days from now, so that I can get feedback. This is also a good double check time. Is my technology working the way I intended? How do my graphics, how do my slides look? And very importantly, again, engagement through use of your voice. That pitch range, pace, use of pause, intentionally planning that into your presentation. So at least 60% of an effective presentation is going to be taken up in that probe, plan, practice phase. And then virtually, you present. Now, will there be little things that will potentially come along that day that could get in the way? Sure, but don't waste a lot of energy on that. If you know what you're talking about, you can always give a highly effective presentation, even if all the bells and whistles of your technology aren't there for you that day. And remember, you now have these wonderful tools of chat and cameras so that we can see each other, and voice over internet. All of those things are there to, again, I'll emphasize it, help engagement, attention, and therefore retention. Now, during the present, you're also going to do Q&A. And this is where, wow, having that camera becomes so wonderful, because you've got someone asking you a question, you've got that opportunity to be able to respond to them, look right in the camera, right at them, and really come across in an honest, credible, trustworthy way. So you can learn to use your camera to enhance your connection with an individual as well as the whole group. The last step is process. And that's not, gee, I'm processing while I'm, presenting. No, this is everything is said and done. And now you sit back and you critically evaluate what happened. What worked? What didn't work? What would you do differently the next time? I got to tell you, every single presentation that I have is a learning moment. So thanks for sharing this slide. This actually is the guiding principle that we use in the virtual certificate program, virtual presentation certificate program. So I'm glad that you put
Yeah,
that up
no, I
there.
think it's good. I think when we're looking at presentations, going through a step-by-step process to lead to that endpoint and lead to success is important because,
Mhm.
things shift. Just the other day, I was planning on actually going into the office for an in-person meeting, and it shifted to virtual. And what did I do? I planned, I looked at how it would be different, how it could be more beneficial, and making sure that I was set up for success and giving yourself that confidence, because
Yep,
just as
yep,
in-person presentations, confidence and looking with a positive mindset is going to help you be a better presenter at the end. You don't want to be all nervous with your fidgeting hands or anything like that. And looking at that,
right.
we look at in-person presentations as so different from virtual presentations, but there are similarities. You still the same outcome.
Yes, there are.
So, all
Mhm.
right. Well, let's go
Absolutely.
into a little bit more of, how can we be more effective with virtual presentations than face to face? It's something that we have to do, and how can we make them more beneficial to the audience and to ourselves?
Yeah, and that almost sounds like an oxymoron. How can we be more effective virtually than we might be face to face, where we've got everything, our body and our voice and our eye contact and right, all that stuff there to help us. But there actually are some true advantages to virtual presentations. One of them is just that you have time and resources to really manage that presentation process. I find that a lot of people's stress and speaking anxiety comes from the unknown. That, okay, I'm going to walk into this room and I'm not absolutely sure how the seating is going to be set up, or I'm not absolutely sure how the visual projection is going to work. Guess what? When you're in a virtual presentation, because you've been practicing in that environment, you set things up to work in that environment. So a lot of the guesswork and a lot of the things that can stress people out sort of go away. Or at least for
Mhm.
me, that has certainly been my experience. The other thing is that attention piece again. Um, there is a difference in how people respond if they're just sitting in a chair versus they're on a camera and they're right here, right? And they know they're visible individually. This is where they are. Uh, their attention is really improved. Now, I don't have a statistic for it, but I know from my own experience that that is a real plus in that environment. Um, and then all that interactive stuff that I've been talking about throughout our chat here. The fact that I can, without getting pulled way off of my program, I can hear from everyone in my audience by using chat. I I or a poll. I can instantly know where everyone is, and everyone has to respond to me versus me maybe just talking to one person who might be there in the room. So the engagement piece, again, is so enhanced by the virtual environment. It's lively, it's interactive, if you approach it that way. Now, you'll no doubt have noticed that I'm standing. I've moved around a little bit during our time together. I do that because it helps my voice. I have more support for my voice, but it also creates more of that sense of energy, readiness. And that is contagious. Right? You never assume your audience comes with that. So you have to bring it. As a presenter, maybe sitting isn't going to be the answer for you. Maybe you need to stand up. So those are just a couple of things that immediately come to mind for me that you want to play around with. And again, I want to go back to the certificate program, the virtual presentation certificate program, because we talk about these things, but then people have to do them. And they get immediate feedback, and then they know. Now, that's not the only way you can get that kind of feedback and experience, uh, but I got to tell you, it's powerful to hear from other people what works in what you're doing and what doesn't work. And virtual presentations are not unique in that regard. Right? We have to practice them and we have to do it. We have to learn how to be in this environment because it is our environment now. Organizations over and over again that I work with are saying, you know what? It's saving us a lot of money. It's creating a whole different experience for our people who are working remotely. This is something we have to all get good at, all of us, not just senior management, not just the people who are in sales, everyone. So I see it as a great
I do
opportunity.
too, Susan, and it's a great point. Building that skill and giving yourself that time and practice is so imperative when we're looking at how you're going to effectively virtually present things and content and really make an impact where we're so used to doing things in person, and it may get back a little bit more to that, but it's not going to be like it was. And we have to get more comfortable. And I think we've been given that opportunity to use more cameras, to use our voice and make impact that way. That let's make sure that we're doing the best that we can and being the best presenters we can and setting ourselves up for success that way as well. So thank you. We we are
Absolutely.
closing in at the end of our half hour and our conversation. So let's wrap it up with some key takeaways for our audience, Susan.
I think key takeaways is don't be scared of it. Really, it's a new skill. There are some things to consider. Those things can be learned, they can be practiced, and we can get really, really capable in operating in this virtual environment. The big difference is engagement, engagement, engagement. We have great opportunity to really heighten engagement for all of our listeners if we do the right things, right? So if we really practice and utilize those best practices of virtual presentations. And and I just encourage everyone to think about what is it that they can do to step into this opportunity, because this opportunity is really going to open up vistas for each and every one of us. So take some courage, get some training, do some activity that will make you better, and then dive in, get going with it. It's here to stay.
Thank you, Susan, and learn from it. It's okay. It's
Yeah,
a learning curve, and just as I said before, we learn by doing, and that's a great way to really increase your skills and put yourself out there.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Susan, for this conversation. I hope that everyone that is with us learned something about this important skill. And again, Susan, thank you so much for spending the time with me.